Dictators?
Indeed.
I do not think.
So what we're actually gonna do is like we're gonna tell you a few things about Stalin, and then we're gonna psychoanalyze him. We're gonna see what made him what he is.
So what made him?
What he is? Who?
Yeah. What's your thought?
He became a really big control freak, and he thought that everyone.
But why?
That's wrong.
Just saying he became a big control freak, that doesn't explain why. You actually have to dig deep. You have to analyze why.
Yes.
Joseph Stalin was an icon for his people at the time.
And his mustache.
Maybe let's not
He
use
led-
the word icon.
Yes, he was an
He was
icon.
iconic.
He led his people. He united his people in a very efficient way. But then after the Americans, after the Americans,
Bombed him.
after he died, they dissolved the Soviet Union
Yeah.
and his work. And
Yeah,
so, yeah, no more Stalin, no more Soviet Union.
How sad. I think we should reform it.
What?
What? Anyways,
I
let's
think
move
we should
on.
say it like that.
Okay.
Jose Stalin.
Little Stalin.
Oh
If you look
my
at his
god,
trousers,
so
you're gonna
cute.
find his combo.
Do you think he is
So-
sexy or not?
Stalin was born.
I'm
Not.
just kidding.
So at the time his name wasn't Stalin. It was Julian, something Georgian, because he wasn't Russian. He was Georgian. Which is a small country in the Caucasus that was part of the Russian Empire, but he was not part of the Russian ethnic group. This will be important later. He was born to a family where his mother was their friend, but his father was not.
So we can actually dig a little bit deeper on that. So he was actually born in a pretty poor family, right? So his family was was staying afloat until he actually was born. And when he was born, his family drowned. They were in debt. They sometimes couldn't even eat. And his father became just a drunk, right? So his father started abusing his mother. His father started abusing him. His father started being absent, and when he was here, it wasn't exactly good. So exactly. So
Most dictators have that actually.
yeah, most of them have that. So what happens when your father is actually absent? What happens when the one figure you're supposed to actually take as an example isn't here? When the one figure you're supposed to take example of,
Karl Marx.
what happens is first of all confidence issues. Exactly. So what happens when people have confidence issues? Some people show it, some people just crawl into a hole and die. Others don't. It's factual. Others don't. Others, what?
Question.
Do they like overcompensate?
Exactly, they do. When people have confidence issue, what they do is that they don't show it. What they do is that they try to control everything because for example, in Stalin's childhood, he couldn't control everything. He was beaten by his father. His mother was being abused. He couldn't control it. And from that, he actually got a thirst for control. He didn't want this to happen again. He wanted to control everything. But he also learned that he couldn't, depend on people, but also people weren't that valuable anyways. He didn't care about people because he never learned to care about people. And that's why he didn't exactly have remorse when he killed more people than Hitler.
What?
He did.
We'll get to that later. We'll get to that later.
I think you don't know anything.
We'll get to that later.
There's also the paranoia.
Stalin.
That's later.
Can you repeat it? I did not understand.
We'll get to that later.
He had what you take from that is that he had confidence issues, which led him to try and control everything.
Later, as Stalin grew up, his name was, we should call him Joseph, because he was born to a Christian family. He was sent to a Christian school, a Christian university, and he was
Catholic?
Orthodox.
Orthodox, and he was going to be a priest to administer whatever sort of religious
According
member.
to his mother's wishes.
But there in university, he found something better: communism.
Yay! Marxism.
Marxism.
Who
Not Lenin, Marxism.
Who introduced him?
The thing is, he was an avid reader, right? So he started with Darwin's theory of evolution, and he soon started reading more and more and more.
Wait, what? Sorry, so he went from Darwin's theory of evolution to Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto?
He did actually, and he started reading about it. And in the actual Marxism ideology, he found the answers to what he was searching. He found an ideal. He found something that he could actually hold on to. And he built on that.
Would you mind giving us some dates, please?
One, please. No.
No, when he was about 20 year, when he was about 20 year, it was when he was.
When he was born, he was age 0.
It was
No
when,
way.
when he was about when he
Oh,
was
okay,
okay,
sorry,
thing is,
sorry.
when he was in his teenage years, he actually got kidnapped by his father, right? So things that actually happened was Stalin and his mother moved away and went to live with a priest that his mother knew, but Father Stalin did. Stalin's father didn't like that. So what happened? Stalin's father kidnapped his son. So the priest did actually manage to get Stalin back, but it left a huge imprint on his psyche. And from that, Stalin, it has never been proven, but what I can tell you from a little bit of psychoanalysis is that when you have those experiences, when you have those feelings that you can't control anything, when you have those feelings that you are in pain, you dissociate yourself. You don't actually get the emotions. What you actually do is that you start building an armor around yourself. And that armor, he used it. And he used it to climb even higher. He started with Darwin's theory of evolution, and then he grew. He went to the actual Marxist ideologies. And he found those Marxist ideologies as something to just hold on to. It was a chain. It was his chain. It was his pedestal, and he was standing on it. And for him, it was a strong base, and that's why he continued on. Stalin, over the course of his life, he was not exactly doing things for himself. He was doing things for the ideology. That's what he wanted to do. He wanted to build something in the future. He wanted to carry on the Marxist idea. He wanted the ideology.
Was it?
Yes.
Yes, question.
Was it already popular?
Marxism?
Yes,
Marxism-
it was getting more.
It was growing. So you first had the Communist Manifesto really started to pick up in the mid 1800s. But then serious communist movements started coming much later, until more or less the first communist nation, major nation, the Soviet Union in 1921.
Were there any other?
There were many communist movements, the international.
Countries? No. Were there any countries that had a communist regime, or that propagated as a country the ideology of Marxism and communism?
I think the first was Russia.
And the first major one was Russia. We later had communist China first as a little breakaway sort of political revolt
So you say,
in China, until eventually it developed into the CCP in 1948.
so you say that he got his inspiration. He got
inspiration from Marx and Angus.
okay, and this came from his experience in the university.
This came from him reading books from the Socialist and Communist Manifesto, such as other books written by the two.
Alright.
Okay. Then for developing, you have Russia. Russia, which was the nation he was born into, but the Georgian region, was a very politically unstable country. You had the unpopular Tsar, Nicholas II, and then you had movements against him. No one liked him. He was a horrible leader. He didn't know how to rule. He was unprepared for it when his father abdicated. And so we have these revolutionary movements, of which Stalin. He's hot. Oh, that's all I'm gonna say.
Looks like it.
And so,
Bad taste.
is that bad taste?
Not hot.
Do you like him?
Well, you like Stalin.
Don't you?
Stalin is based.
He's pretty hot.
He's not hot enough.
Really?
I would like take out the beard, trim his hair. He could be hot. I see the potential, but I don't see the
Oh my
hot.
goodness. It's a history
Okay.
presentation.
Yeah,
No.
Yeah.
That's the point. That's the
Keep going with
point.
your presentation.
So what's your presentation?
And so he joins.
Trying not to die, please.
He joined the Communist Party,
Stalin.
and he's arrested multiple times, sent to Siberia, where he has his first son, who we'll get to later, or has a son there. And so he grows and becomes more and more popular until eventually, when the Communist Revolution happens in 1917, he's at the forefront, along with people such as Lenin and Trotsky. And then, after Lenin's death in 24, he, over a period of time, around 5 to 10 years, becomes the sole leader.
Okay, so what is actually important to note in that little period is that before, when he was actually when he was really close to Lenin, when he was really at the forefront of the actual communist movement, what actually happened is that he didn't show himself as an alpha dictator. No, he showed himself as a mediator. He waited until people just stated their arguments, and then he found a middle ground, and that's why people like him. He disguised himself. He played people. He acted as a wolf in sheep's clothing. He made sure that people actually liked him, and then he took over.
Also, he did like little by little.
He did.
He would imprison people, exile people. He exiled Trotsky and
But
He started like
sorry,
very slowly.
in
Yeah.
1929.
Is there there's a jump, correct? Because you
Yeah,
cannot
there's the
imprison
period
him.
of like
At
8
some
years.
point,
It's not-
he's
it's-
like the
Oh,
official
the main
ruler of
date people
US
use
He came
as
from-
the main date people use for when he becomes social leader. It wasn't like a switch like he becomes president or something. He maintained the position of premier secretary of the Communist Party. But most people use the date is when Trotsky was forced into exile. That's the date people use.
And how? My question is, if it's detailed, is it? Are you gonna detail how he came into power? How?
We just said like literally.
Political maneuvers.
Political maneuvers.
Yeah.
Okay.
He would make certain people unpopular. For example, you may have seen examples of him using Photoshop to change photos to make him look like he's not close to Stalin, to Lenin, than Trotsky was, by even making sure Trotsky wasn't at Lenin's funeral.
What he did, which is a very common move in actual politicians and in diplomacy even today, he manipulated people's opinion. He made them see him as a good person, as someone that they actually wanted as a leader, and he made others unpopular. He made others want to choose him and want to leave others. He made sure that people actually wanted him. Once again, he disguised as a wolf in sheep's clothing. He didn't show everyone that he would cause millions of deaths. No, he showed them an ideal. He showed them what they wanted him. He showed people what they wanted to see. And that's why he actually came to power. That's how he came to power. He used techniques, he used diplomacy techniques, he used techniques to actually not control people's mind, but influence them to a point where he could actually manipulate what they were thinking.
Yes, Bora.
My question is, yes, before he came to power, he was a wolf in sheep's clothing, as you say. But once he came to power, he started doing the
You have
quote funny business. Like, why did people not? Because Russia has a history of revolutions. I mean, when people saw that he was not a great leader, why? Like, how did he remain in power?
well,
Here's how.
just to tell you,
Next slide.
you have
This guy, Dictator Stalin. He was.
So let's just
you have 10 minutes.
let's
Just
go through the presentation, then we'll ask questions after.
You have
because
2
I
minutes. 10 minutes. You have to.
It's good, it's good. Sorry, she's vice president. No, it's good. Just take your
Yeah.
time. And we'll maybe do questions at the end so that you guys can actually get.
Yeah. So
This is really good.
Stalin became sole dictator, and he had some economic reforms, which are important, but we're not going to cover here. But of note is his purges. Maybe you've heard of them. Starting in 36 and then in 39, Stalin basically killed all of his opposition. Even people that weren't even against him, he killed in a sort of paranoia. He became so scared of Trotsky, of fascists, of anybody in government that he killed hundreds of thousands of people, close to 1 million Soviet citizens. High members of the government. So you've got people like Budyonov. Trotsky even was a victim, but he came later. Maybe you've heard of an assassination in Mexico City with an ice pick into the head. Very, very, very nice guy. And so over the time of the years, this paranoia sort of goes down, but it leaves scars on Russia, on the Soviet Union, where large swaths of the civilian government, of the military even, are dead. All the top leaders were killed out of fear they're going to coup Stalin. And so it means that going into the Second World War, a lot of the top generals were dead, just killed.
Which explains the great military success at first.
Yeah, that's part of the reason, because the better generals had to develop. All the good generals from the World War I, from the Russian Civil War, from all the following wars, killed, gone.
What's also very interesting to note is that when you actually look at most dictators, when you actually look at most political leaders, actually, most of them were paranoid. Why, you may ask? Because first of all, most of them actually had issues in their childhood, so they had trust issues to start with, but they were constantly in danger. They constantly had opponents who tried to hurt them. Especially with Stalin, what we can see is that in his childhood, his father tried to hurt him. Then he actually got kidnapped. What do you think happens when he goes into power? He finally has a chance to achieve his dream, to just impose his ideas, and people try to kill him. He will become paranoid, and he will lose himself in the process. Why? Because when you're constantly hunted, you have your basic instincts that activate. You become a prey, even if you hide yourself as a hunter. And that's what happens. He became a prey, and he couldn't show that. So in order to actually hide that, he became stronger, and he started putting a stronger and stronger facade. But there were some cracks, and those cracks started to appear more and more and more.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I have to go. I have an appointment.
How dare you?
Right.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Alright. Then, even some megalomaniacal developments ensue, where he names many cities after him, such as Stalingrad, such as Stalino, which are two cities in the Soviet Union, which just changed completely. For example, Stalingrad used to be Tsaritsyn, so after the Tsars. And there's a whole development of a cult personality around him, of people would not only praise communism, but would praise Stalin for freedom, for the whatever else, for freedom. For their freedom against German oppression during the Great Patriotic Wars. And Stalin developed this, he encouraged this, because it meant that people loved him. And what it meant was that once he had sadly passed away in 1953, many people mourned him, but others were less so inclined to mourn him, because they remembered his purges. They remembered how he killed all of their friends, and they remembered who dared say even a single thing against him, or just not at all. And so, coming out of him, about a year or two later, with Nikita Khrushchev, there's a process of de-Stalinization, where statues were torn down, Stalingrad was renamed, and people were less so completely awestruck by Stalin, more sort of critical of him, of maybe he wasn't as good a leader.
So yeah, so if, what you can actually get from the psychology of dictators like Stalin is that, first of all, they all are a bit of control freaks, right? And that control, that is a condition that usually takes root in the childhood. But why? Someone may ask, why are so many conditions caused by the childhood? That's because when you're a child, you're weak. Factually, you're weak mentally, you're weak physically. And you're trying to build yourself. You're trying to construct yourself into maybe into the person that you will become later. But first, in order to do that, you have to take examples. You have to take some statues that you will build yourself as the image of. The thing is, those dictators, Stalin, for example, his father, his mother, he didn't have those images. He had to start building himself up with an armor. He didn't actually have this safety net around him. He actually had to start building himself. But he couldn't actually do that in the nice, kind way. Why? Because he never actually learned the nice, kind way. He did it in the only way he ever learned it, by violence. And one can say maybe it worked, one can say it doesn't, but that's how it works. The human psyche, there are a lot of actual theories in psychology about where does your actual personality come from. It can be biological, it can be just external factors. Some people may believe it's a bit of both. But what is for sure is that it is external. It does have an external part. Why? Because whatever happens in your life, it will influence the course of events. It will influence your actions. What happened in Stalin's childhood, when he was actually trying to, when he was at his weakest point, they made him weaker. And he had to start and try to build himself from that. So he built himself from the cracks. He couldn't be a mentally sane person knowing that he didn't actually have this strong base. So he tried to construct his base. He tried to use something that wasn't an actual base and to disguise it as a base. That's why he was so intent on actually, that's why he was so fond of Marxism. Because that was his base. That's the base that he actually found to cover the lack that he had in his childhood.
Probably because Marxism was also strong. It probably felt like a family to him.
It did.
Because his family was very lacking, to say, and the idea of comrades and friendship, which was pretty present in Marxist movements, but probably also strongly motivated his ideology.
That is extremely true. he found a family in that place. He found some people. He never had anyone growing up actually. He was never exactly like those other Orthodox kids. He was never like those little gangsters in the street. He was different. And why? Because he had all those baggage. He had all those emotional baggage that just came with. And he had this armor and he couldn't let anyone in because he never learned to. So when he actually was introduced to this communist movement, he saw it as an introduction. He saw it as a family. And he used that. He used that as a base. He used that as family. He used that as something to hold on to.
All right, so we've got a bit of time, but one of the most important parts of Stalin's reign over the Soviet Union was his purges. So here's a fun little game where it's kind of like Lugaru, where one of us is a traitor. Traitor to the Soviet Union, a Leninist. How dare they? That's pretty question.
I want to be a trainer.
Yeah, but you try points that you're
Well,
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Sorry.
So I've got
I didn't understand.
5 pieces of paper here, written either NKVD, so an officer of the NKVD, which is the secret police, in which case you're pro-Stalinist and you must find a traitor. And then one of these has traitor written on it. And you can't share your card. And so each turn, we have to denounce one person, and then you have to speak like a little like less than a minute, less than 30 seconds of your speech, on why you think it's them. And then the end of the round, we have to kill one person. If we don't, we all lose. And if by the end of round 3, we have not killed the traitor, then we lose. And if by the end of round 3, the traitor wins. Or those two, you can kill Stalin.
Trainer is a percent and KPD officer.
Yeah, he's pretending to be an NKVD officer. So we need to find the NKVD. Yeah. Alright. Don't share it.
How do we get any basis to accuse people? We just like throw accusations in the air.
Yep.
yes.
I saw you yesterday.
Doing what?